Yeah, there's no rewind, and there's so much you need to learn that you can't learn except for in the ring.
You know, and something good has to be born from that. Something has to derive, something that's truly going to be great has to be derived from something great.
See it in his eyes that he didn't want to fight, and it made me not want to fight. It's like, well, whatever, dude. Like, I don't want to hit you if you don't want to hurt me.
So Chris Mauceri is a young guy, fairly new professional. I think in the past 2 years he turned pro.
Yeah.
Do you think your experience is going to play a big factor in this fight?
Oh, yeah, I mean, obviously it will, you know, but, you know, I expect a really good showing out of him. You know, anytime you go in there with somebody that's that much better than you or more experienced than you, usually you'll rise to the occasion or fall to it. You know, like 95% of my career, I've been in his shoes, you know, fighting people that are way more experienced than me from day one. You know, either they have more experience than me, more weight than me, one thing or another. I was always the underdog, so I know what it's like to be in his shoes. It's kind of awkward for me to be in my position. So I'm expecting a lot out of him. I'm expecting to put on a good show.
So you kind of flipped from where you started.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I know when you were first out there and taking your first fights, you were beating guys you weren't supposed to beat. So now you're on the other end of the whole spectrum.
Yeah, but that was me. It's not Chris, hopefully.
So right now you're cutting weight as we're speaking, and I know you put on some size. Your last few fights, about 10 pounds of muscle. So what's been the difference?
Well, that kind of came from first was my fight with Chike. And, you know, knowing how big he was, I wanted to put on some weight, and you know, I knew I could deal with it speed-wise and those kind of things, but just the power and everything, I knew I would need to put some size on in order to take his strikes a little better. Yeah. Same thing with going up against Malapit. Like, I wanted to get as big as I could, just because dealing with those kicks is like getting hit by a car.
Oh, for sure,
it's just awful. You know, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So, you know, from doing that kind of, I put on a lot of muscle from that and just kept it, you know, and just put on more and more. I don't know why, but luckily I've been able to adjust my diet and everything. And as I you know, I did that post the other day. It's easier for me to make weight now than it was 5 years ago, and I was 10 pounds lighter back then.
Okay, so what's been the difference? Do you have a nutritionist?
No, just eating cleaner and you know, be more consistent with it, I'd say. You know, where before, you know, I'd eat bad.
Fat guy Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Doing it right after fights.
You know, I mean, I still do it, obviously, after fights. I'm pretty public about the bad things I eat, but, you know, when it's time to work, it's time to work. You know, I don't mess around.
There we go. So, aspiring fighters are trying to figure out the best way to run their training camp constantly. What's either a day in the life of Kevin Ross, or just pretty much like an easy way for you to summarize your training camp?
Yeah, you know, people always ask me, you know, what should I do, how much should I run, what should I eat, how much bag work should I do, and I mean, it's basically impossible to tell somebody. I mean, you could say, okay, this is a good like baseline what you should do, but everybody's going to be different, you know.
Individualized.
Yeah, well, whether it's your training, whether it's your diet, whether it's your coaching, you know, one coach won't work for everybody, you know. That's why it's good to kind of play around with a few things and see what works for you, what doesn't. So there's like, you know, as far as your running goes, I mean, there's too much and there's too little. Just like your weight class goes, there's too heavy and then there's too light where you're weak. So you got to find that middle ground and constantly be adjusting it through your whole career. I mean, I continually adjust things. You know, you never have it just set. You know, so the more you can do that, the more you can make those adjustments and try to add new things in, whether it be to your diet or your training, and then, you know, maybe take some things out and come back to them later on, you know. And that's really the most important thing, I think, is having that open mind, being able to make those adjustments and improve that way.
Alright, that's awesome. That's really good advice, guys. So you're a fighter that's really known for his aggressiveness. So what's usually your mental state before a fight?
Sleeping, actually. I have a problem with being too calm, because I'm not naturally psyched up and pumped up about a fight. Where a lot of people they almost get too nervous and they're just like a wreck, you know, and they got to kind of calm down and find that middle ground. Where I'm on the other end of the spectrum, which is weird for me. For years and years, I thought everybody was like that, and I didn't, you know, until one day, like one of my friends, he had like 200 fights, and he was still all like jacked up and, you know, like kind of freaking out. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And I'm like falling asleep, you know, and for me, it's more important for me to kind of psych myself up, because I've gone into a fight completely just dead and flat. You know, and I tell everybody it's better to be too nervous than too calm, because, you know, either way it's bad. But if you're too calm, you're gonna have no adrenaline going.
You
You're
feel
not
it all.
sharp.
You feel every
Yeah,
kick.
it's I don't recommend that to anybody. I had one fight like that. It was terrible. So, you know, I'm still pretty relaxed all the way. But when it's time to get going, you know, when it's getting close to fight time, you know, I kind of psych myself up and be like, all right, it's time to fight. You know, snap out of it. Let's
Do
go.
you listen to music, or is it just self-talk?
Yeah, I listen to music, watch fights. You know, usually when I'm getting my hands wrapped, I'll start watching fights on like my iPod and stuff. And
Who's your guy to watch?
everybody, man. I go through all the fights, old school stuff, Deckers and Johnson and Porncini and all those guys. But you know, whatever. I mean, even sometimes there's like motivational videos and stuff, just
Yep.
get you in that mindset and stuff. So that's what works for me, you know. And like I said, everybody's different. You know, some people just need to be left alone. Some people need people yelling at them in their face. I need to be left alone. Like, don't bother me, don't talk to me, don't yell at me. I can do this by myself.
Yeah, I'm definitely on a roller coaster ride when it comes. I get too calm, then I get too psyched up.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, especially at a high level, that people not only are the same, they almost get worse. It's like, am I gonna get less nervous as I get better? No, most of the time you get more nervous. There's more pressure. There's more expected out of you.
Yeah.
There's more risk of being injured at a higher level. You know, those kind of things. So usually it ends up getting worse, but you learn how to deal with it better. You know, as opposed to just being a wreck and making it affect you negatively.
Yeah, it's like a new stimulus every time you make that jump to a higher like division, higher, you know, expectations from a bigger show.
For sure.
So,
there's always something to add.
I knew when I was going from like C class to B class to like pretty much A class to semi-pro, it was every time making that jump and going against guys from like the Watt and stuff like that. Even though I felt comfortable, I feel uncomfortable again.
Yeah,
so
and you should feel
that's what it
uncomfortable.
is.
That's how you know you're doing something right. If you're comfortable in there, you ain't fighting the right people. You know, you shouldn't just be in there and be, oh, I'm just going to destroy this guy, because you're not testing yourself. If you're not testing yourself, you're not going to get any better.
Yeah, I've always had that same mentality. So when it comes to fighters like that are aggressive and really have that calmness and it's just natural to them, do you think that's also something that can be learned, or that's something that you've had within you that just makes you go aggressive in those fights?
It's definitely something that's always been in me. I mean, I think over the years I've found how to kind of control it better or use it more to my advantage, where, you know, some people have that kind of aggression that almost hurts them because they're overly aggressive, and a lot of times it'll work out great in the amateurs, but as soon as people can deal with it and not scared of you, and you know they got a good defense, I mean, they gas out and get knocked out, and then it's a mess, you know. So just like everything else, it's all about balance, man. And yeah, for me, I've always been calm, but when it's time to go, like I want to go. I don't want to hang out and run away and move around. I want to hit people. I want to get hit. I want to be in the middle of it, you know. And that's not for everybody. I don't recommend anyone fight the way I do. You know, I don't tell people to fight the way I do. I wouldn't tell anyone to do what I do, but it's just what I do. And anytime I've tried to be different, I've just felt terrible and awful and felt like I was lying when I was in there. You know?
It's like anything else. It's not organic anymore. It's not you, so you can't you can't be in your zone.
Right.
So.
I just felt like I was telling a lie to everyone. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's bad. Yeah.
So you're notorious for pretty much overcoming your defeats and then fighting the same guys you fought before, beating them. Yeah. This happened recently with your Canadian fellow.
Yeah.
What's your mentality after a loss that like helps you achieve that win after?
I don't know. I mean, every rematch I've ever had's been a little bit different. I mean, obviously with the Embry one, you know, the first fight I was coming off of that fight with the flu.
Yep.
And that was still stuck in the back of my mind and wanting to make those adjustments. Still coming off the knee surgery. I mean, it was only my, whatever, third or fourth fight coming off that. So there was things I was trying to implement into my game, and I just took it too far.
I thought it was more obvious when the first time, to be honest, than the second.
I did too. I did too. But whatever. Everyone sees it differently. And in both those fights, the decisions of them don't mean anything to me because I didn't enjoy them, either one of them. I didn't like the fights. Definitely not the first one because I know I didn't fight like myself, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
So that one bothers me even more so. But yeah, going into a rematch, it's obviously you always want to do better than you did the time before. It can be tricky though because now that person kind of knows you a little bit better. It's easy to watch somebody on tape or whenever, but when you're in there with them, you really get a sense for how they really do fight and how they move and stuff. So the second time they kind of have a better sense of what you're going to do, just like you have a better sense of what they're going to do. So they might make adjustments and they might not. You don't know. So you kind of have that going on once you go in there again. But yeah, I always go in there to do better than I did the time before, whether it's a rematch or just another fight. I always try to go in there and be better than I was the time before.
Yeah, exactly. I just had the same experience. I faced the same opponent I did in the WKAs, and I fought him in a regular event. And I was kind of just able. It was exciting to see which one's going to make the better adjustments.
Right.
Whether I'm going to do it or if he's going to do it, and it was a decision the first time. So
yeah,
definitely looking for the finish the second time.
Yeah. Well, then you don't have to worry about judges.
So, what have you been thinking mentally for this fight, preparing for it? Like, what has been the road to...
Well, like I said, most of my career I've always gone in there against people way better than me. I've always been somebody that's been able to raise up to my opponent's level, so it's which has been a good thing for me since I've always fought people better than me. But those few times I've fought people at a lower level, I almost dropped down to their level. Like I almost let it take the fight out of me. In the gym, smash out people that aren't as good as you, but in a fight, it's not so much, and I kind of have that going in fights, which has been bad. And I've been kind of learning over the years that that's just like a weakness on my part, especially like the last Embry fight. I almost allowed him to take that fight out of me because I realized he didn't really want to fight. I mean,
he wanted to clinch you.
Yeah, he wanted to clinch me, but even that, I mean, he was really just holding on to me and rubbing me with these knees. It wasn't like a clinch fight. I'm all for clinching. I don't want to people to think just because you're clinching it's not fighting. But I could really just see it in his eyes that he didn't want to fight, and it made me not want to fight. I was like, well, whatever, dude. Like I don't want to hit you if you don't want to hurt me. I kind of like I don't want to say it's that I feel bad, but if I don't feel threatened, it's hard for me to kind of turn it on. But that's something I need to fix. I mean, that's not a good thing to have because sometimes you're not going to fight people that are gonna come at you and try to kill you. And that's something I'm trying to fix in this fight. I mean, I know Chris is an aggressive guy and he likes to come forward, which is great, and I hope that he does. But if for whatever reason he backs off during the fight, I can't just allow that to be like, oh, okay, and let's just not. I don't want to hurt you, man. I need to go in there. I need to go in there to hurt him, to prove a point. And that's really what I'm trying to mentally do going into this one is not allow my opponents to dictate how I fight, and do what I do.
There you go. Keep it organic. Keep it yourself. And it's like what they say. There's sportsmen and then there's fighters when it comes to fighting. Yeah. So obviously you're the fighter.
Yeah, I'm trying to be.
So where did the Soul Assassin nickname come from?
Man, you know what? That
wins you some fights, I think.
Maybe.
In the beginning.
I don't know. It really fits kind of to my style, which is why I think it's stuck over the years. But I actually got that my very first professional fight, which was in Guadalajara, Mexico. I fought a guy. He was 31-1. He just lost his first fight. They called me up on 2 weeks' notice to go out there and basically get beat. And I went out there and I put him in the hospital. And it was just this crazy fight. And, he split my head open and my face open. We were bleeding all over the place. And, he was hitting me with everything he had. And I just walked, well, basically how I fight, I just walked through it all and just kept coming at him. And it just broke him, like, to where he waved his hands at me while he was bleeding on the floor. But he was like, no. And this old Mexican guy in the audience came up and basically said that should be my nickname. He was saying how he just looked like you destroyed his soul, like you killed him, like you killed his soul. You could see the spirit leave him, like he didn't want to fight anymore. And that's I was like, yeah, all right, I'll take that.
You saying Mexican or English?
Yeah, broken English. You know, I got the point of what he was trying to say, and you know, like I said, it's just that's how I fight anyway. So it really stuck.
Is it duh or the?
The only duh came from when I had to make like a Twitter and an Instagram.
Not enough characters.
Well, there wasn't duh on one of them. I don't remember which one it was. For whatever reason, I couldn't put it in there. So I was like, well, I gotta kind of make it somehow. So, duh. That's all it says. Yeah.
So this whole style, this nickname, everything that comes with it, obviously like helps with your image and pretty much motivating other people. I've seen you talk about how pretty much the most you get out of this is even if there's one person that you change or you got into this sport and it changed their life, that's pretty much the reason why you do it. Yeah. Now, when it comes to people and that are inspired by you, fighters that want to compete and kind of replicate your style, whether it's their style or not, what's your advice? Is it is amateur fighting something? There's a certain number of fights you want to get before you go pro, or it's your coach's decision?
People ask me a lot about being an amateur. I would tell everybody just stay amateur as long as you can. You know, you look at like some of the really great boxers. I mean, they're amateur for 8 years. They have hundreds and hundreds of fights. You know, everyone's in such a rush to become pro, especially now that it's big. I mean, before there was no big thing, so there was no rush. I mean, you fight, you just keep fighting. I mean, why go pro? You know. And that's why a lot of people back in the day never went pro. You know, the promoters would pay them under the table. They could stay amateur. They wouldn't have to pay commissions and things like that. So, you know, back when I was coming up, there wasn't a lot of big pro cards. You know, there's a lot of pro-am cards, so the amateurs would get to fight as pro. And that's why people thought I had a lot more fights than I used to, because I used to get to fight full rules as an amateur, which was awesome.
Yeah, I see your record is written overall, and then you have a pro record. Yeah. So is the rest of the fights all amateur? Or
amateur, and then the boxing and the MMA and the, you know, those ones. So the overall is just every fight I've ever had, every time I've been in the ring. But yeah, I always tell amateurs, get as much experience as you can. I mean, unless you're going out there and just knocking every person out in the first minute of every first round, okay, now go pro. Yep. But I doubt that's happening. So get your experience, you know, get as many fights as you can. I mean, you look at a guy like Jason Andrade, he was amateur forever. Like, so much to the point where I was like, dude, when are you going pro?
Yeah.
Which I never do. And like, he was amateur for so long. I mean, we started kind of at the same time. But that's what you want to do. Now he's got all that experience, because once you go pro, there's no going back.
Exactly.
I saw one guy do that, and I didn't know. But that's another thing altogether. Yeah, there's no rewind, and there's so much you need to learn that you can't learn except for in the ring, and you're never going to learn it unless it happens to you in there, like getting hurt in a fight, getting sick in a fight. You know, I mean, there's a billion things, all these little things, and that's when you want to figure those things out. You don't want to figure it out in the pros. You know, that's a bad time to learn. You know, for me, I was kind of forced into the pros along with some other people, and it was good and bad for me. I mean, I didn't get that long amateur background experience, and you know, I kind of got thrown to the wolves. But luckily, I was able to rise to the occasion. But I had a lot of really brutal fights and injuries and things like that, and so it's been a hard career because of those kind of things. You know, I didn't get that learning. I was forced into it almost. But yeah, stay amateur. As long as you're fighting consistently, you know, and learning every time. It's like once you go pro, yeah, you might make some money, you might be on a big show, but you're probably not going to fight very much, especially in the beginning.
I feel like some people might do that just to call themselves pro.
Right. It's all about this ego thing. And I'm like, well, there's no money, okay? So even me, I'm making minimum wage, and like I'm one of the highest paid people there is. You know, I don't make any money.
Medicals cost more than the promoter's going to pay you.
It's crazy. And then if you're not fighting all the time, I mean, there's only so many pro cards here in the States. I mean, you can go overseas and fight all the time you want, but you don't even got to go pro or amateur. Just go there and fight. But yeah, there's only so many shows. There's only so many fighters they can put on each time. And if you don't make a name for yourself or make it to where they want to put you on the card or can sell a lot of tickets or whatever it might be, you're out of luck. Now what are you going to do? Now you can't fight. You can't go back to amateur. You're just stuck with, hey, I'm a pro, but I don't fight ever. So why would you do that? Don't do that.
So there you have it, guys. He kind of summed it up all for you. If you're really aspiring to be a fighter, take your time. Really work your way up. It's going to give you a better image. You're going to be more promotable once you become a pro, and you'll have the experience to do it. You won't have to go backwards. Is there any other last words you want to give people? Any shout outs to any sponsors, friends?
Shout outs, yeah. Can't Stop Crazy, obviously. Lion Fight for all they do. Glory, doing big things. K Hero, Osiris. There's a lot. I don't know. I'm gonna miss people now. I feel bad.
Are you into skateboarding?
I skated for like 10 years when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I still have that in my head, in my style and things like that. But no, I haven't skated since I was like 18.
I'm the same way.
Killed myself.
Every one of my little problems, even when I'm fighting, comes from skateboarding.
Yeah.
Knee surgery, ankles. My ankles have gotten a beating.
Yeah, I bet.
21 years old, and that's how I'm feeling.
Wow. I don't want to tell you how I feel. Yeah, just thanks to everybody. Thanks to all the fans, all the supporters, guys like you. I mean, doing shows like this, all this stuff is what's helped the sport over the years, and what's helping it now, and will continue to help it, is everyone doing their own little part.
Exactly. Especially when it's growing so much now.
Yeah.
I think every little bit helps.
Yeah. Yeah. From the littlest thing to the biggest thing, all those things, the more the better, especially when they're done right. But even if they're done wrong, people still talk, get the word out. So it's good for everybody.
It's just like, hey, when people don't like you, they're still talking about you.
They're talking about you. Get them talking. The right things will come along.
All right. Thank you, guys. Sweaty Cup.
Wake up.
Sweaty Cup.